Mike Sennello, please.
So I want to cover 3 topics tonight. Hopefully I have time to hit them all. First, Discount Council discussed, voted on, and approved a budget this year that got sent to the Board of Finance for final review. The municipal side of the budget went almost entirely untouched by the Board of Finance before it was sent to a referendum, in which the voting members of this town further approved the municipal side of the budget. From what I can tell, this body approved what is essentially the same municipal budget we the voting demographic, approved as well. You seem okay with it, we seem okay with it. I don't see any need to spend even one breath discussing the municipal side of the budget, if nothing else but for the sake of concision. I implore you to not waste anyone's time with the municipal side of the budget and instead to move on and do the hard thing that we all know needs to be done. Second, I advise the council to take all the opinions you hear tonight, including my own, with a lot more than a grain of salt for 2 reasons. One, the sample that will be presented to you tonight suffers from what is called self-reporting bias. This means the sample is tainted by the fact that it is not randomly selected and therefore it can be said to inherently be representative of the opinion of the whole of the population. I'm short on time, so if you have any questions about self-reporting biases, I recommend asking your fellow councilmen, of whom I am certain at least a few have taken enough statistics courses to understand the effects of self-reporting biases. 2, the sample size you'll hear tonight is certainly going to be so small as to be considered entirely anecdotal and thus not representative of the opinion of the whole population, especially when compared to the thousands of votes that were cast in the last referendum, and is the reason we are meeting here tonight in the first place. The third and final topic I want to discuss is voter turnout. I took the time to gather and compile the results of the last 18 budget referenda from vital statistics in the clerk's office in a worksheet I would hope to have entered into the record, if for no other reason than as a reference for future concerns in regards thereto, if I may. It is my understanding that at least some members of the electorate are concerned that the most recent referendum lacked a proper voter turnout as a result of last week's storm. Considering the timing and brief length of the storm, I find that difficult to believe, especially when compared to the data regarding this year's voter turnout. In brief, at 17.93%, no referendum has had a higher relative voter turnout since the second referendum in 2010, and since 2004, only 3 first attempt referenda have had higher turnouts. One was 2004 itself, the year in which we were just 1 year removed from the extremely highly contentious 2003 budget referendum, which only narrowly passed on a 3rd attempt in August of that year. Another was 2006, whose 25.5% voter turnout is so outside of the norm as to be considered anomalous, especially when that was a year in which the PTO and BOE made by far their most concerted, active effort to drive voters to the polls, going so far as to make signs specific to this effort and to distribute VOTE t-shirts standing for Voice Our Right to Educate. We have certainly not seen nearly so concerted an effort from any source since, and it should be noted, they should absolutely be commended for their efforts 12 years ago. It should be noted that every referendum with higher turnouts than this year since 2004 predates 2011, and the trend since has been far lower voter turnouts. I do not know what happened in 2011, but there is a stark contrast in voter turnout starting then, which is so abrupt compared to previous years as to indicate a trend bifurcation. This is why I have broken down mean voter turnouts into since 2011 and since 2004. In fact, this year is a full 1.36 standard deviations above the mean since 2011. In terms we might all understand, this year's 17.93% voter turnout would put us in the 92nd percentile of all possible results following the trend. There is a lot more we might glean from the data I have presented in this handout, copies of which I am happy to leave here at this podium. But the thing I'm hoping is impressed upon the body is that claims that turnout for this year deviate in any way from the norm in a negative light are not in any way remotely supported by the data. And I find it difficult to believe that last week's storm had a meaningful enough effect on the turnout as to declare the results no longer representative of the population. To put this plainly, the BOE budget failed to pass by 149 votes.
Mike,
In
you have
years,
a minute, please.
Sure. In years in which the BOE budget passed, it did so with a mean relative margin of 12.87%. What that means is that if every voter who was genuinely precluded from voting because of the storm voted in a manner that was a reflection of the mean margin in passing years, it would require another 1,158 votes for a relative turnout of 25.1%, which would be the second highest turnout of the last 18 budget referenda, before which I have no data, and only surpassed by the 2006 referendum I previously mentioned, and only by a narrow margin. Data and sound, logic-driven decision-making is all I ask, and I don't think that's unreasonable. Thank you.